It's trying to start. I don't know what's
All
going
right.
on. Zoom's a little bit of a struggle with YouTube recently.
Looks like it's going on.
There we go. Yep.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order at 6:06. Roll call is, we're missing Brian Cope, who's going to be a few minutes late, and he'll meet us in closed session. And Andrew Entrican is going to be about 30 minutes late or so, and he will also meet us there. Otherwise, everyone is here currently with John, and we'll have other staff joining us later. So before we adopt the agenda, I'm going to make a couple amendments to the agenda. I move to remove the communications charter, the EPC charter and approval of committee members, and the Parks, Trails, and Recreation charter and approval of committee members from the agenda tonight.
Second.
Oops. All those in favor? All right. So do I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Move to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, let's get over to closed session. See you guys there.
Okay.
Oh, wait,
Well,
need a
make a
motion
motion.
motion, sorry.
I move that we
okay.
go into the session.
That was almost a disaster.
Oh, okay. Who makes the motion?
I move to go into closed session.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you.
All those in
All those-
favor? All right, see you on the other side.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, the board has entered their closed session at this point for an unspecified period of time. However, there is a fairly heavy agenda today, so hopefully this will not be any more than perhaps an hour, but could be longer than that. However, after they've completed their closed session, there will be several other items of business, as well as an opportunity for property owners' comments at the end of the session. You're welcome to stay here with us and wait while they handle their closed session, or if you like, you can follow along on YouTube. We are streaming there. Just search for Sudden Valley Community Association and the live stream should come up as an option for you. Otherwise, sit tight, maybe grab some dinner, and they'll be back soon. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Hmm,
we have some emails asking questions. Would you like me to add that to the announcements? Or
somewhat,
we have an email asking a question.
an email asking.
Yeah, somebody said that I think it was, let me go look. Somebody asked a question because they couldn't be here tonight.
I didn't see anything, but
Oh, here it is. Question for board meeting. It's from Michael Wadsworth. So do you want me to read that during the homeowner?
sure. Yeah, that would work. All right, do we have a motion to come back into open session?
Move to come back into open session, but I haven't got a clock. So you know what time?
8:44 second.
All those in favor? All right. Do we have staff here? Took a little longer than we anticipated.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry
they're
about
pulling
that.
out.
Hi, we're still here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the
Got your
board is
blankie
taking,
and your pillow?
I'm in my pajamas.
Perfect.
the board is taking no action as a result of closed session. We will move into announcements. Does anybody have any announcements?
The only announcement I have is I'm still looking for one person on the nominations and elections committee. I still have one vacancy.
Noel?
I guess this falls under announcements. This morning, we appointed 2 new members to the ACC, Tom Henning and Chad Brewer.
Okay.
I guess you're supposed to give their blessing.
Yeah, we'll do that under the committee section.
Oh, okay, sorry. I'm new.
No worries. Any other announcements from board or staff? All right, we can move into the general manager's report. And I'll pass it over to Brian to speak on as much as he'd like, and then if the board has any questions.
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So not a lot to add. I will go over, there was a few updates that were made. This is pretty much the report that that was produced for the AGM, but there were a few updates to some of the slides. So I'm assuming you all have in your packet, so you're able to look at it. Let's see there. On the HR side, the big addition would be the fact that we have Rachel, HR and admin. Obviously, she's on site doing a fantastic job. Pretty amazing effort she's making on our behalf, considering that she's still relatively new, but she's been a huge help through this transition. So I'd like to express my appreciation for all of her efforts, for sure. Rec department, no real updates there. Same with the marina. On the golf side, I did make a few updates. Got our revenue there through November. We are still having a very successful year. Now 7 of the first 11 months have been best ever months in revenue. So really pleased that seems to be continuing on. On the turf care side, not great news on the rainfall. We're now, this is through last week, we were up to 69 inches. We're now over 70 inches, and with what we have coming, we'll almost certainly set a record for rainfall in the 10 years that Jacob and I have been here. So we don't love to see that, but still makes the revenues, the revenue gains this year even more impressive. So we feel very fortunate there. We've now, Jacob is now up to 60 tons of bunker sand and 800 tons of top dressing sand applied to this point this year. No, no real updates on the maintenance side from the November report. And public safety, Norm continues to do a good job monitoring the COVID situation for us and making sure that we are in compliance with all the protocols. And that would, I think, wrap up all the updates that I would want that I would want to make note of in the manager's report.
Does anyone have any questions? All right, well, we can continue on then. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
We will move forward into the treasurer's report.
I'm sorry, I was looking for my mute. So as the treasurer, we have yet to meet for the finance committee. We are currently looking for people to fill our roles on the finance committee to be started in January. So that is my update for this month. And for the October 2020 financial statements, I will hand this over to Joel.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So there, I'll go ahead and just start on page 16 of your board packet. I always, just for the heck of it, I guess I'll just start off with the balance sheet. The good thing about this, like I always say, is there's nothing exciting going on in a good way. We have net operating assets. Basically, this is just assets versus liabilities and owner equity, and everything looks fine from this standpoint. Now, if you turn the page 17 of your board packet. So now we're looking at the net income. Find the collection rates here. Okay, I'll start off with the collection rate. So I've calculated November's collection rates as well. So I'll talk about those along with talking about October's collection rates. So the collection rate at the end of October, month to date, just for the month, 94.9%. In relation to September was 94.2%. Then in October, it inched up to 94.9%. This is on a month to date basis. In November, the collection rate actually went up, which is good. It went up to 98.1% for the month, which means then with if I go back to October, that basically just means that our year to date, which is really the most important thing at this point, year to date collection rate is 94.5% at the end of October. It was approximately 94.5% at the end of September because it just really wasn't much of a movement. And then since we're so deep into the year, even though the month to date rate went from 94.9 in October to 98.1 in November, that it moves the collection rate up year to date from 94.5% at the end of October to 94.9% at the end of November. So the collection rate has been inching up a little from September. In terms of what this means now for net income. So net income in terms of like year-to-date net income at the end of October was, and I'm just talking about the operational net income, 74,818. Now in relation to last year in 2019, we had net income of 434,368. Expenditure-wise, so in terms of like net income, better or worse to budget, we're under budget net income-wise by approximately 6,600. I'm just rounding this number. Last year, we were better than budget at the end of October 2019 by 308,500 approximately. Now, in terms of the good thing, in terms of expenditures, if we're only looking at the expenditures, like you'll see year to date at the end of October expenditures, 2,946,573. The number to the right of that. This is how we're doing according to budget. So we're actually better than budget at this point in the year by 88,569. Now, last year, we were actually worse than budget by 61,000, well, almost 62,000. We were worse than budget last year in terms of expenditures. So we're doing a better this job controlling the expenditures than last year. Now, what this does is I talk about the expense to revenue ratio, which only means as a percent of, basically as a percent of, for every dollar of expenditures or for every dollar of revenues, how much are we spending in expenses? And so it's inched up, it's 97.5%. So that just means for every dollar of revenue, we took in 3,021,391. For every dollar of that, we spent 97.5 cents basically in expenditures. In September, it was 90.6%. A lower number is always better. We had more net income at the end of September. And then year to date, in terms of the end of October, is 86.7%, 2019. One big difference too, on a month to date basis, which is showing up at this point is for October. So there are 2 months out of the year where we'll have 3 payrolls that fall into a month. And in 2020, October happens to be one of those months. It's the second month, it's the second time that that's happened. Last year in 2019, we had 3 payrolls that fell into November. So like if you look at things on a month to date basis in terms of salary and stuff like that, October this year will actually, the October this year will actually appear to look worse than the October last year, since the October last year only had 2 payrolls versus this year we had 3. So if we turn the page to, if you turn the page to page 18, this is just, I'll just talk about this since that's the next page, and then I'll go more into detail in terms of expenditures on a departmental level. So this next page, this is just the reserve cash balance and activity fund. This is just showing you your major funds, SURF roads, capital reserve holding, board density, UDR, emergency ops, all those funds. And it's just showing you basically snapshot of how much cash that's in the fund as of the end of October. And that first kind of net available cash at 10/31/2020, for example, SURF, 1,519,590. That will always tie back to the balance sheet for SURF and balance sheet cash. And the bottom number at that next kind of bold number at the very bottom, close to it, 964,490. That's how much money we would anticipate to have if we spent all of the approved capital projects at this point going on. And this includes as well in roads, those 2 additional change orders also to the Windward Drive. So that's worked its way into this number. And these balances are up from where they were last year this time, all of them. If you turn the page to page 19, so now we're essentially looking at the income statement again. This is only for the month, just the month of October. Now you're looking at the income statement on a departmental level. So you can see like how the departments did, better, worse than income, and where, like for example, where a variance would be, like for example with administration, salary and benefits. Now they had net better, worse, or worse than budget for the month by close to 15,000. Approximately 13,000 of that was in the salary bucket line item. In terms of salaries, like the only thing really would be admin. In case you're wondering, like Marina has, in terms of the salaries, better, worse, like for example, 3,707 worse than budget for salaries. And that's because we didn't have a person budgeted to be in the Marina when the 2020 budget was put together. Golf now looks a little worse, 7,938 to budget. And that's really only because Brian was the one who like fine-tuned the budget. He wanted to fine-tune how much payroll would fall into each month. But of course now we do have a month where we'll have 3 payrolls. And then to me, it looked like that didn't quite get factored into it. And that's really the only reason why there's a variance for golf there. Now, in terms of golf for the month, golf has, in terms of revenue, 42,606. Last year at this time, at the end of October, they had approximately 29,000. So golf's revenue is up by over $14,000. Their expenditures for the month 104,000. This is where this became evident to me real quick, why there was kind of a difference with salary numbers from one year to the next. But so their total expenditures for golf, 104,317. Last year it was 72,358. That's the difference by about 32,000. One component of that is the fact that last October they only had 2 payrolls. This October we had 3 working its way into it. Then in November that scenario will kind of start to flip around. But in terms of golf, net incomes, so it shows actually at this point only for October net loss 61,700. Last year they had a net loss of close to 44,000, difference of about 17,750. Now if we turn the page to page 20, now this is where this starts to look, especially this deep in the year. Just look at it year to date, all the departments, how they're doing year to date, January through October. So now we can see at this point, basically the departments, well, basically it's really only 2. It's administration. That's the difference is about 12,311. And remember back in October, there was kind of a difference as well going on with salaries. The big thing, and I've talked about this every month, is maintenance, that 104,650. Now, last year, approximately 90-some thousand dollars was voted to be taken out of UDR to be spent on weather-related stuff. And this year, maintenance department shouldered the whole thing. So we did not take any money out of UDR to pay for snow removal maintenance, just ate it, so to speak. It's all in their operating expenditures is what you're seeing here. Now, in terms of golf year to date on this one, so golf has actual revenue for the year, 867,197. Last year they had 858,673, so it's an improvement by a little over $8,500, which is good considering the fact that golf was closed for about over a month, during March during the mandated shutdown. Their expenditures for golf for the year, 730,851. Last year their expenditures were 753,421. So golf's expenditures now you're seeing is lower by 22,570 year to date versus last year. So then this starts to show up in the net income for golf, 136,346. Last year their net income was 105,250 approximately. So their net income is 31,000, close to 31,100 higher than what it was last year at this point. In terms of AJ was wondering, he was talking to me about a potential projection of where we think we could stand year-end wise. And at this point, basically the key for me to look at is, so we're looking at on the income statement, how I said we're sitting on about $74,818 as of year to date through October 31. So we have $74,818 you could think of to work with net income wise at the end of October. And then at that point, then I start to look at, well, what are we budgeted to spend, say in November and December for the month. And so for November, we're projected for the month to have about $23,719 loss for that month. And then in December, it's projected, meaning it's budgeted, to have a $56,755 loss for that month right there. So let's see, I'll just add these up real fast. So if we just stuck to that as it is, that's $80,474 of a net loss between those 2 months, which would conceivably eat into what we have going on right now of a net income of $74,818, which puts us at around a potential, if everything stayed just according to that scenario, a potential net loss of $5,656, but it also kind of keeps us in the ballpark that we're kind of in the running to possibly even break even. Now, what I've done actually before the board meeting is I took a look at, in terms of expenditures, here it is. So I looked at what we have going on in November, everything that I can see so far running through that GL. Now we have some things going on in the GL that haven't yet shown up, like payroll and stuff like that, but I can delve into the payroll records and figure out what that's going to be, which I've done. So I tried to account for everything that I know of that could come through at this point. Now, this is barring possible like AP invoices that could show up or something like that with November dates on it. But so far, it looks like we're tracking possibly for November just for the month, a net loss of about $2,000, $2,036, which is, according to budget, what did I say was for November, 23,700. So if we did stay close to about a 2,000 loss for November, then we're making up possibly about $20,000, which could still keep us in the running for a break-even type scenario, hopefully. Of course, there's no promises that we will break even, but it's not outside of the realm of possibility for us to break even possibly. And even taking into account of foregoing the April dues here. But that's basically, the overrun of the financials. If anyone had any questions. Linda?
Okay, let's start off with, so we had a loss of $185,056 in October. What was the budgeted amount supposed to be?
Okay, so yeah, you're talking about just for the month, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the budget amount for October, the actual budget amount for the loss, of course, I can just back into it just for the numbers on here, but since I already have this right in front of me. So the budget loss for October was $98,101.
Well, then what happened? Because this is huge. There's stuff in there. I've started looking at some of your GLs, and I'm going to send some questions to Andrew because this is just not acceptable. It's like we've done so well all year long, other than in April and May, and this is just out of the ballpark. I get with salaries and benefits, but you've got huge overages in just a month of like 21,000 in contracted professional services. You've got almost 25,000 in maintenance and landscaping just for a month alone. Regulatory compliance, you've got almost 20,000 alone. That's huge. That's huge for this late in the year, especially with things shut down like they are.
Yeah, the landscaping.
Now, keep in mind, Linda, yes, I hear what you're saying. Keep in mind, you're also just looking at for the month of October, meaning like some of these costs that come in can come in at certain times of the year. Like it can't be controlled exactly when it comes in, like a certain invoice, for like a maintenance software renewal or something like that can show up. And then that can skew like a one particular month. That's why also at this, especially at this point of the year, like I rather looking at it as a year-to-date perspective in terms of like how the departments are doing year-to-date. So like when it's looked at year-to-date, like on page 20, then we can zero in on, like how are certain departments doing on a net income wise year-to-date. And then at this point, it looks like pretty much, you've got maintenance and you have a little
$103,000 over budget
for the month. Yes. But we do have months, like for example, we do have months where certain months, it's already worked into the budget where we're assuming that those months are going to fall underwater just in terms of when certain expenditures show up. But in terms of some of this comes down to just the timing of when certain invoices actually.
I understand about timing, but I'm saying I'm looking at some budgets that I'm looking at the 2020 budget and going back into some of our stuff and looking and seeing that things like, it looks like our utilities are really good. If you look at just communications across the board, as of the month of August, our communications across the board were like $9,000 over budget. Some of these individual departments are way over budget. So that, and if I look at the general ledger, it means that stuff has been purchased that probably wasn't budgeted for, but purchased just the same.
Well, in terms of like when I'm looking at what departments are over budget, what I see in terms of through the end of October is I see maintenance, like I said, admin a little, golf a little by only like $9,000 worse than budget.
You know, I'm hearing you. I'm just saying when we're working with a year where we forgave a month of dues, to have a month this late in the year when most of that stuff's looked at. I'm not done looking at the GL yet, but I'll send my questions to Andrew to send to you. Because there's things in this GL that are just beyond disturbing. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, but like I said, some of these things that do show up. Like it can't be controlled precisely what month it's going to hit, like certain renewals or invoices or just things that come up during the year.
Joel, I understand that, but I'm saying if I can look back at the 2020 budgeted amount for any given thing in any given department, that budget should have considered any of these things that fall due during the year, correct?
Yes, that's the goal. That's because budgets always look past it, or they look at past expenditures from prior years.
And that's all I'm looking at. And I'm saying there's stuff in there that's disturbing.
Linda, will you be emailing those things that you noticed to us?
I'll be happy to copy you on that.
Thank you.
But also, Linda, keep in mind, I'm just reporting to you what comes to me in terms.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, you know, there's stuff in there that it's like, I look at it, and if I really go digging down into it, you know, it's like the further you go down that rabbit hole, the darker and deeper it gets. And I understand that you're just reporting what you do, but it's like, I'm saying it's just, you know, I understand stuff comes due. And you mentioned the maintenance software.
Yeah.
Well, the next little trick's gonna be find out, was that budgeted for in that budget? Because it got stuck in facilities. Wasn't put in the maintenance department, was put in facilities. But that's, I'm just saying, I'll be happy to look at all that.
Joel Dobbins, sorry.
Yeah.
Two Joels. Joel D.
Hey, Joel. First time talking, I think. Asking a question here. So I'm looking at page 22. I'm looking at the simplest page here as someone who's only taken like the most basic accounting courses. And obviously the big red spike means bad. So you're talking about.
Oh, did you say page 20?
Page 22, the chart here.
Oh.
So you're talking about the unexpected invoices coming in for this month. Are these expenses that we should have expected earlier in the year? Is this something we're going to see later in the year where all of a sudden we're going to have a $100,000 surplus for November? Or because I heard you say that it would balance out or it would kind of flip in November as far as the salaries go, but with the maintenance software, with these other unexpected things, has that already come? Is that on its way?
Yeah, in terms of like for payroll, you'll see some of these things kind of flip around in terms of only for the payroll numbers. So if you were to compare like November's payroll to last year's payroll, then next month will look like, oh geez, we're doing really well, like way better than we did last month, like in November, since you're looking at 3 payrolls hitting November 2019 over like 2 payrolls in November 2020. But some of these things, like for example, well, like accounting, there's a good one in terms of like it's in the budget for like an audit invoice to hit, you know, I think basically it's back in possibly August or so, but you know, we got a $10,000 invoice that's budgeted for, you know, for us to get it from the auditors. And then it shows up like in October, because that's when we're getting invoiced at this point now for the stuff. So it's in the budget, it's just showing up in a different month, which is making that one particular month look a little skewed. Because actually back in like August looked like, oh wow, county's doing just incredible, you know, but that's because we didn't have audit invoices hitting for the month.
For the most part that you're saying, we're catching up with expenses. We're not kind of prepaying. We shouldn't expect to ride out the year easy. We're paying for riding out the first part of the year easy.
Oh, sure, yeah. Yeah, and that can happen too, just in terms of the timing of like when actual expenditures get to me. Like this, like the maintenance connection software, when that invoice showed up, or like for example, just any type of like high dollar invoice that hits me that shows up in a month that maybe was anticipated to show up in a different month. That was budgeted to show up in like an earlier month. Now the question in terms of like, it's just something that I have to keep an eye on is in terms of like going back to Linda's point is do the expenditures continue, or have we gotten over the hump in terms of like seeing other big ticket invoices showing up?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions on the finances?
Like hopefully, like just one final comment in terms of like on the finances, you know, in terms of me, because like I said, like I took a look at November as well as I could in terms of what can I get out of the GL at this point, and I'm factoring in all the anticipated type expenses that I know will hit the GL, like payroll, prepaid insurance that will become like insurance expense, B&O taxes, things like that, processing fees. And so far it looks like, you know, we could track around a $2,000 loss in November for the month. Now we're budgeted to have close to $24,000 loss for the month of November. Of course, now what remains to be seen is, will something show up in AP, like an AP invoice that's stamped with the November date that I'll have to backdate it back into November. That's kind of what it comes down to. Which would then go back to Linda's point, would we have some other surprise invoices, you know, that show up?
Joel D.
All right. One other question, and just because I am sorry to say, but I wasn't looking at every page of the agenda prior to being elected. So back in August, you said this is when this invoice was due. You were looking at this and saying, wow, we're doing really well for the month for these guys. Was this noted in the finance report at that time that we had an invoice we were expecting to get and it hadn't arrived? It would be hitting later in the year.
Are you talking about the accounting one that I used for an example, that one?
The
that was the one that I brought up for.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I can't remember if I mentioned that or not.
Okay. I'm just wondering if, as we review this month by month, if we're looking at information that looks really good and it's because something is about to come due that we aren't aware of, an invoice that should have been due that month. And just in terms of planning for a few months, does it look really great and only because something is just waiting?
Yeah. Usually if I'm aware of like an invoice that, or an expenditure that was budgeted that would normally hit in that month, but it didn't, and I know it's going to hit later, usually something like that I'll mention, or I'll try to mention it.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, were there any other questions? All right, we can continue onward with the agenda. So the next item on the agenda was the prior board discussed putting the 2019 operational surplus. The the board voted unanimously. I do not recall which month, maybe December or January.
December.
December to put the operational surplus towards our surf loan that is outstanding. And so, Joel, could you just reiterate to us what that operational surplus, ended up being here, and then we can continue on after that with the discussion.
Sure, yeah. So basically, through the audit, I made a couple audit adjustments that affected operations, not really by that much, but so basically what that does is the operational net income would then go to approximately 128,719. Now we do have the rec net income of 23,605. So when I subtract that from the 128,719, that leaves us with approximately 105,114 to apply against the surf loan.
Okay. And so at this point in time, the board did decide already to do this. The logic that the board, and anyone who was on the board last year can correct me if I'm wrong, but the logic behind this was that is a large outstanding debt that we have, and the surplus would go, towards helping reduce interest that we would pay on the loan and helping us pay down that loan faster. So I think what we'll do with this meeting is we'll just make another motion with this specific dollar amount that Joel has given us. And just, well, I guess we just have to remake the motion because the motion and the directive was not carried out prior. And so I feel that it's important to remake the motion with this dollar amount, because I do not believe the previous motion had an exact dollar amount tied to it. And then we can move forward with any discussion the board has then regarding this. So I will make a motion that the board of directors approve to take the audited the 2019 surplus amount of $105,000. Wow, sorry. $105,114 to be applied towards the principal on the surf loan.
Second.
Any discussion?
No, AJ, can I say something real quick?
Yep.
Go ahead. I just wanted to mention at this stage of the game with the audit, like I'm really comfortable that this is it, and I think I could just transfer this tomorrow if you want me to do it.
My directive would be that the board wanted this done the last board wanted it done in 2020. So I would be directing this board that we should put this on our 2020 books as well. Kim?
Can we know why that the money didn't get transferred before?
I can answer that. Yeah, basically, Kim, over the course of the audit, certain audit adjustments can be made, which can affect the operational net income, like the actual audited final net income. And that was really kind of the holdup in terms of that. So I discussed that also with Joe and with Karen at the time, and I mentioned that to AJ too soon after he took over the presidency. But at this point now, at this stage of the game in the audit, this is like, I think this is it. This number is it and can be transferred.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And just to be certain, when we're looking at the financials in relation to this, so we have our yearly financials that we just went over for the month of October. It's showing we have a 2020 operational surplus of 70 some thousand or so.
That's right.
And so we don't have $105,000 in this budget, but there is operating cash on our balance sheet that shows 900,000. So we have this money in our accounts to be able to transfer over. That operational surplus of 19 has just been sitting there waiting for this, basically.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. I thought I saw a hand, but I don't know. Sorry. Go ahead, Justin.
What is the remaining principal on that loan?
Let's see. Oh, I'll just look at the balance sheet. So it's approximately 1,387,000, basically 1,388,000.
Do we have any further discussion on the motion? All right, well, I will call the question. The motion on the table was for the board of directors to approve a 2019 audited operational surplus of $105,000 and $105,114 to be transferred to pay down the principal of the SURF loan. All those in favor? Any against? Looks like it passes unanimously. All right, so we will continue onward. I think our next, sorry, I'm just trying to pull the agenda back up. Looks like ACC has a couple of items on the agenda. You're on mute.
Mute. Now I can speak. Sorry. Yes. This morning at our ACC meeting, we voted in 2 new members, Tom Henning and Chad Brewer. So they will be joining us, and that makes 7 on our committee out of 9.
Can you, sorry, does ACC have to be approved by the board? Linda, do you know?
I believe it's in the bylaws that they have to just bring it forward once they make their selection.
Yeah.
Because the elected committee is a little bit different.
Yeah. So I have to bring it to you, and you kind of have to go
Well, I guess for formality's sake, make a motion to approve by acclamation Tom Henning and Chad Brewer.
Yes.
Second.
Okay. And just so everyone's aware, an acclamation vote is basically raise an objection if you have one. Otherwise, it's assumed pass.
You better not.
All right, everyone at the same time go.
Ominous.
All right. So we got that taken care of. And it looks like you have some minutes as submitted as well. We removed the communications charter from the committee, the EPC agenda items. Brian, I believe with long range planning has 3 members to bring to the board. You're on mute, Brian.
Sorry. I would like to bring forward Lori Bender and Ty McWilliams and Richard Henderson as members of the LRPC. And I believe they would each have 3-year memberships. You'll have to help me with that, AJ. I believe 3-year memberships.
Yep.
And, yeah.
There's no penalty for early withdrawal if anyone is interested in joining.
You
our
can't leave.
committees.
You can't leave before. I don't believe the bylaws specify a penalty for early withdrawal.
I don't either.
Can you just put that in a motion quick, Brian?
Yes, I move to approve 3 new members of the Long Range Planning Committee. And Ty McWilliams, Richard Henderson, and Lori Bender.
Second that motion by acclamation. Any objections? Not at this time. Linda and an E.
Minutes is posted. You're not going to see any of it for the new committee until in February, because we don't meet until January after the board meeting.
Okay. And we also removed the Parks and Trails Charter and approval of members. So we'll continue on to new business. So I brought forth a resolution for the board to create a general manager transition committee. So I make a motion to approve the resolution to establish the general manager transition committee as provided in the board packet.
Second.
Second from Linda. So discussion, I'll start. As the community is aware, at our last meeting, we terminated the services of the general manager. And now this is a committee to begin the search process for new management. The purpose of the committee is to look into property management companies versus self-managed model that we're currently running under, and to provide a report to the board for consideration between those 2 different management models, and also to explore Sun Valley's options to do a comprehensive search for the next general manager. And the committee would expire basically once the new general manager is hired, or if for some reason that didn't happen by the next AGM. Basically, the responsibilities are for the committee to look into interim general manager options, to fill the position that would allow Brian to go back to his normal role as our golf director and provide all of our managers back in their normal day-to-day jobs. Like I said, we'd also solicit proposals from community management companies, as well as conducting a full search for a new general manager. And yeah, basically some of the details further are outlined in the charter. And yeah, I don't really have any more to say on that. If there is any discussion, I'll open the floor. So not seeing any discussion. So I will call the question. The motion on the floor is for the board of directors to approve the resolution to establish the general manager transition committee.
Second.
Oh, no, we did that. We're voting?
Yes, sorry, my son just started screaming.
That's okay.
I got 2 kids screaming upstairs and one mom who's probably like, what's going on? Sorry, the motion on the table was for the board of directors to approve the resolution to establish the general manager transition committee. All of those in favor, signal aye.
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 Any against? All right, So that passes unanimously. Moving on to the next agenda item is I'm bringing forth to the board a resolution to establish an audit committee. So I move that the Sun Valley Board of Directors approve the resolution to establish the audit committee as presented in the board packet.
Second.
For discussion on that, so, you know, basically where we stand is, and the thought process is a nonprofit board are ultimately responsible for the effective, responsible use of nonprofits' resources. Oversight includes controls, the policies and procedures designed to assure accurate reporting of the affairs of the organization. An audit committee during this time of transition will be of significant help to the Sun Valley Board in effectively performing our fiduciary and oversight roles and ensuring reliable financial reporting and reducing risk. Our board has a fiduciary responsibility to prepare the Sun Valley Community Association for the future and ensure its financial sustainability. As board members, we are ultimately responsible for the appropriate and effective use of Sun Valley resources. In order to make the most productive and efficient use of individual directors' time and expertise and to help advance the organization's goals, like most nonprofit boards, the Sun Valley Board addresses specific issues at a committee level. Just as the board has tasked the Long Range Planning Committee or EPC or the Communications Committee or any other committees and task force that it forms, the board has the authority to create an audit committee to assist the board. The audit committee charter has clear and legally appropriate procedures that have been reviewed by Sun Valley Legal Counsel, which will guide the committee in providing information and making recommendations to the board. The audit committee, as defined in the charter, is an advisory committee of the board with no authority to act on behalf of the board other than to fulfill its duties and responsibilities outlined in the charter. Is there any further discussion on the topic? Paula?
I'd like to amend the motion to include at the end that any items brought by the committee and found to be actionable by the board would be reviewed by an independent third party prior to action being taken.
Second. Any discussion?
I have some points I wanted to raise with the amended motion.
Yep, that's what we're discussing is the amended motion.
Thank you. Thanks. If we are putting together actions before we know what that committee is going to find, I have huge concerns with that because we don't even know what's going to be found. All of this was reviewed from our attorney, and this language was actually assisted by our attorney. And we have a huge community support for it. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just say that the committee is an advisory committee and that I feel that that language is not really needed because the board will be making any final decisions on the report that gets provided, and the board could make that decision if necessary at that time.
Right.
And I want to be clear, I support the board's ability to do that. I believe that we will. I support the motion. I support I think that was a wonderful statement, AJ. I think that was a great statement. And I do understand that we have our attorney's support for it. My only ask in the amendment is not that we change any of the allowances in it, not that we it's not an argument against the motion. It is an argument for an additional layer that we have a third party independent review of the information that comes out of it prior to taking any action. That's it.
Safi?
I would just hope that we as a board are smart enough and put together enough to be able to review whatever we find and then make the appropriate decision. I do not want to promise, I do not want to put into this motion an action that we're going to do before we know if anything is found or what is found. I don't think that putting ourselves into a commitment to find an independent auditor, third party to look at anything that we find as a board that's not frugal at all. I don't know. I would just wonder why. I guess I would want to know why. Why do we need a set of eyes to look at something when we just got a whole nother set of eyes? Basically, I don't know. It just feels like redundant.
Joel, then Kim, I think is what I saw.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the the language of the amendment just sounds too it's very vague. We can't take any action without talking to a third party. That really ties our hands, and then the more you try to add specificity to that language, the more it just becomes what the board would do anyway. If it requires a third party, hire a third party. If it doesn't, don't. I think
that's kind of what I was trying to say. Thank you.
Kim?
I was going to add to Paula's point, if in fact, without putting language in the charter, if in fact the board decides that they can't make a decision and we need expertise, we still always have that option, right? It's not something that we need to mandate, but us as being, responsible board members of this community, I don't believe that we would make a decision based on that committee's recommendation if we thought we didn't need extra to hire an extra consultant. So I think that goes without saying that we wouldn't make a decision that we felt ill-informed about. And we always have that option for ourselves. I don't know if that makes you feel any better, but I mean, I just don't see us taking that committee's recommendation and just running with it when we aren't quite sure what the outcome, or if we don't feel that we are qualified in an area of expertise to do so. I feel confident that this group would make that call at that time if we saw that. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Thanks, Kim.
Joel?
Just going off of what Kim said and what I said earlier as I think about this more, if we were to find out, for example, that money was being wasted on trail maintenance or something, we would have to hire a third party for thousands and thousands of dollars instead of just cutting a little budget item. That's the kind of thing that's the reason why I don't think that we should amend this. I think we should use our common sense, and as we find things, determine if it's worth spending the money on, or if it's worth, as we've been elected to do, just make the decisions that make sense for our fiduciary responsibility.
Paula?
I just wanted to say I would be open to different wording in the amendment. If somebody had better wording that made them feel more comfortable, I would be open to it if it accomplished the same goal. Again, my concern is not doing an audit. My concern is not who is doing the audit. My concern is that I believe that when you do an investigation, it is always best to have an independent third party take a look at it in the end. And so I'm just, I'm open to having different wording to it if it makes a difference, or taking a vote on it and making a decision.
And just real quick before you go, Josh, the committee likely, if something came back that we were that concerned about, the recommendation from the committee would be, like to hire a forensic auditor or something like that. Like that is, and so if it
I'm just
comes
looking
to a
to add
point
that
like
wording.
that may be the recommendation that the committee comes with, is that that's the road that the committee feels the board should go down.
I guess I'm just looking to formalize that, AJ. That's really what I'm looking to, is to formalize that statement.
Yeah, I I understand that. I agree with the rest of the board that that's, the board needs to make that decision and we don't need to hamstring us to a specific result, because of, that the board needs to be able to make the best decision it can make, off the information that it's given and not be forced into a specific path. Josh and then Stephanie.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if something came about, the board would make the decision and follow our legal counsel's advice, of which who has, reviewed and looked at this charter extensively. So I wouldn't want to, at this point, make any changes.
Do we have any other, or Steffi, or?
I got an elf too. Well, I was just gonna say, call the question. Can we?
Is there any other discussion?
I just want to say that this amendment has been formalized in our commitment to the community when we decided to run. Hopefully we would do this. And I think that you can't formalize it much better than that.
All right. Any other discussion on the amendment? Paula?
I think the way that you formalize it better than that is by putting it in writing. I mean, I think that's the only way that you could get better than that is by actually putting it in writing. So.
All right. Anybody else? All right, we'll call the question. The motion on the table is to amend the audit committee charter to add language at the end that says that any recommendations will be reviewed by a third party. Is that correct, Paula?
Only actionable items. I mean, I think we all hope that it comes back with everything's great, but in the instance that it doesn't, that it would be reviewed.
Well, doesn't that start parsing things when we start thinking about actionable items and non-actionable items? And then, I mean, it takes us back to what the original motion accomplishes, right?
I'm willing to take out the word actionable. But I mean, as it stands, when I made the motion, the word actionable was in it. So I just wanted to make sure that that was.
Okay.
If we're gonna vote, can we state the motion one more time, just to be sure?
I know your concern though, Paula, for sure.
Because we did have that problem one other time where it was like, oh, well, what motion? So let's just be clear.
Can you read your motion? And just to be clear, we are voting on the amendment first, then we'll cycle back to the original motion.
Yeah.
The motion was to amend the motion so that to add that any items brought by the committee and found to be actionable will be reviewed by an independent third party prior to action being taken.
All right. Calling the question on that motion. All those in favor? All those against?
I was in favor. Sorry.
I know you didn't raise your hand, so I was about to assume.
I don't know what I was doing. Sorry.
That's okay.
I was clearly in favor.
I'm pretty sure she's in favor. Andrew, were you in favor?
Yes.
Okay.
So that motion does not carry. So now we are back to the original motion on the floor, which is to establish approve the resolution to establish the audit committee as presented in the board packet.
Second.
Is there any further discussion on this original motion? Paula, then Andrew.
Oh, again, I just want to clearly state that I support the intent behind this motion. I do believe that an audit committee is something that would be useful, and I would fully support this if that amendment had gone through. But I believe it's important to have some sort of a third party review over any type of an internal investigation.
Andrew?
Yeah, thanks, AJ. The resolution identifies only one non-board member participating in the committee, Sarah Holmstrom. I was just wondering if that individual is in the meeting this evening, would like to share any words on why it is they're so willing to help us out on this front. It might be good to hear from her.
Ooh, objection. I have an objection to this, a point of order, that this is a committee and it's a volunteer position and we are all volunteers. We're all on committees. We're all on the board. That seemed a little more than direct, let's just say. Mr. President, would you mitigate that for me, or am I out of line?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if Sarah's here or not, and you know, we're not bringing forth any other committee members to speak in those regards.
Just trying to add a human element to this. I was just looking at the attendance list and realized she might be here, and just wanted to offer that for her that opportunity to just make a few comments if she wanted. I'm not making any demanding requests by any means.
Oh, no, I didn't think that. I was just wanting to be careful about the way we call out community members because we're all volunteers and we're all equal, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I was just like, oh, whoa, let's be careful about the way that statement is perceived. Sorry.
All right, do we have any further discussion on the motion on the floor? All right, so we'll call the question. The motion on the floor is for the board to approve the resolution to establish the audit committee as presented in the board packet. All those in favor? All those against? All right, looks like it passes with just Paula against. All right, so moving on to the next agenda item, which will be property owner comments. So I'll bring John in here to help us bring anyone over that would like to speak.
Yeah, I'll sit up straight here. All right. We've got quite a crowd tonight, actually. So for property owners' comments, if you'd like to come over to the meeting and have your opportunity, getting late, to address the board, just use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Should be down towards the bottom of your screen on, I believe, both the app and on your PC. Don't have any phone in caller. Well, actually, maybe we do. No, nobody calling in on a phone. But just use raise hand in Zoom and I'll bring you over to the meeting.
Tough crowd, John.
Well, it's probably getting late for all of us. Looks like no takers tonight.
I have a comment.
Go ahead, Josh.
John, Joel, Brian, Rachel, thank you guys so much. It's super late, but thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Yeah, as a homeowner, I would like to profess my appreciation to our staff. And as a board owner, I would like to plead my undying thank you.
No problem.
Second that.
Thank you.
Our staff is wonderful and we appreciate you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, well, on that note, let's get everybody to go home then. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great night. Everyone
Good
have a happy
night.
holiday.